Hello everyone, my name is Bryan Delaney. Some years ago in Montpellier in the south of France, on a blazing July morning, I wrote the words "The End" and I closed my notebook. I'd finished writing my first play. I grabbed my car keys, shut the door behind me and headed into the countryside for a walk. And as I walked up the street to my car, I was stopped in my tracks. Right in front of me, sprawled out on the cobblestones, was a middle-aged man in a grey suit. There was blood on the cobbles beside him, and looking at his face, I realized he was dead. I stood there in shock. A crowd of people had gathered, and a shopkeeper had told me that just seconds before, he had thrown himself from a building. An ambulance was called. It felt invasive to just stand there, so I stepped out of the way and walked on. It was about an hour later when I parked down a country road. I got out of the car, and this ferocious wave of heat hit me. It's like opening the door of an oven. And I walked down this lane through a gate into this field of grass, a beautiful field of wild grass, high grass with wild poppies and lavender and sunflowers. And the sound, walking into that field, was like walking into a football stadium full of insects. The noise was unbelievable, cicadas and grasshoppers and bees buzzing. And as I walked along the dirt path with the heat and the smells and the shirt sticking to my back, this overwhelming feeling just hit me. The absolute indifference of nature in the face of that man's death. Here it was, humming and buzzing and teeming as if he had never lived. And suddenly it all felt hostile, oppressive, the air thick, and I didn't want to walk anymore. And just as I was leaving the field, I was stopped by a kind of rustling in the grass. And then I saw it, just a few feet in front of me, coming out of the grass, this huge snake, about 6 feet long, la couleuvre they call it in French, beautiful dark green and brown color. And it just slithered across the dirt in front of me, really slow, lazy, and disappeared into the bushes. And I froze. I remember I could hardly breathe. I just stood there. And the reason I froze is because that morning, just before I closed my notebook, I had worked on 2 key sections of the text, 2 key images for the story. The first was the closing image of the play, the body of a dead man who had committed suicide by proxy. And the second was the image of a snake. Now, to this day, I still don't fully understand the meaning of this. And I can only offer 2 explanations. The first, that this was pure coincidence, and that working on the play had simply made my senses unusually heightened and alert to any reflections of the story in life, and had made me graft meaning onto these events in a way that I wouldn't have done otherwise. The second is that there is in fact a profound connection between the unconscious and the so-called real world, that this was in fact a perfect instance of what Jung would call synchronicity, the coming together of inner and outer events in a way that cannot be explained by cause and effect, but is deeply meaningful. But whichever way you look at it, this much is true, whether through our perception or through something altogether deeper. The story that inhabits us has an uncanny knack of manifesting itself in the world. And I couldn't help thinking about that man on the cobbles. What stories must he have been carrying around inside him that led him to this? And where do they come from? From other people? From himself? And how had those stories grown in him over the years and taken on such force to drive him to climb the stairs to the top of that building? I believe that story is extraordinarily potent. All of life is lived through story. The stories we internalize about ourselves, our self-worth, our lack of it. Story is how we make meaning of our lives. Every waking minute we're bombarded by story. And when we go to sleep, we're flooded by the stories in our dreams. Stories about our deeper selves told to us by a profound and master storyteller deep within us that we don't even know. Religion is based on story. Genocide is based on story. Love is based on story. And recovery in this country, emotional, psychological, and spiritual recovery, will also be based on story. The story we choose to tell ourselves about ourselves. The writer Ben Okri has said, "A people are as healthy and confident as the stories they tell themselves." But he also said, "Sick storytellers make nations sick." As a storytelling people, we're at a crossroads in this country. We need to be extremely vigilant about the stories we choose to tell ourselves. We need to make a choice between the stories that shrink life and the stories that expand it, the stories that allow us to breathe and to grow and to flourish. Hamlet said, "There is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so." When we are stripped of everything, we still have one extraordinary power left to us, the power to choose how we think about it. And if ever there was a time for us to tap into story for the life force that it is, it's now. Thank you.